I'm Tara Mergener. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, crime and punishment. President Trump says the federal government will take over the police force in the nation's capital. We are at the White House. Sounding the alarm, Pope Leo XIV praises recent peace deals while raising concern over the violence in a Caribbean nation. Unhappy anniversary. A Catholic and pro-democracy advocate in Hong Kong was arrested 5 years ago today. We have an update on Jimmy Lai, plus a channel of peace. Learn more about St. Clare of Assisi and why she is the patron saint of television. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
And thank you for being with us on the Feast of St. Clare of Assisi. Our top story tonight. President Donald Trump vows to cut crime in Washington, D.C. and clean up the city. So he's putting local police officers under federal control and deploying the National Guard. The president hopes the crime crackdown serves as a model for other major cities, but he's already facing pushback.
We're going to take back our capital. We're going to make it beautiful again, but we're going to make it, more importantly, safe again.
President Donald Trump declares a public safety emergency in Washington, D.C.
But not only are we stopping the crime, we're going to clean up the trash and the graffiti and the grime and the dirt and the broken marble panels.
The president made the announcement in a packed briefing room at the White House, flanked by cabinet secretaries and law enforcement.
D.C. should be a place where everyone can come and feel safe.
We need to recognize that the people who matter are the law-abiding citizens, and it starts today.
Washington's mayor believes the president is guilty of overreach for invoking the D.C. Home Rule Act to deploy members of the National Guard. She says crime in the city is falling, and repealing the Home Rule would require an act of Congress.
I think I speak for all Americans. We don't believe it's legal to use the American military against American citizens on American soil.
We will bring in the military if needed. People say, oh, that's so terrible. He's going to bring in, it's been used many times over the years.
Now, during that same White House briefing, President Trump talked about his upcoming summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The two leaders are expected to meet in Alaska on Friday to discuss the Russian leader's parameters for ending the war in Ukraine.
I'm going to meet with President Putin, and we're going to see what he has in mind. And if it's a fair deal, I'll reveal it to the European Union leaders and to the NATO leaders, and also to President Zelensky. I think out of respect, I'll call him first, and then I'll call them after. And I may say, lots of luck, keep fighting, or I may say we can make a deal.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will not be included in those talks, so he is sending a message to President Trump.
We understand the intention of the Russians to try to deceive America, and we will not allow it. I appreciate the determination with which President Trump is determined to stop the deaths in the war.
In the Middle East, outrage and outcry after a journalist is targeted and killed in an Israeli strike. This is video of the funeral held today for Anas al-Sharif and 4 other journalists. Al-Sharif worked for the Al Jazeera network. He and the others were in a tent just outside of a hospital when they were killed in an Israeli strike. Israel accused al-Sharif of leading a Hamas terror cell. Both al-Sharif and his network previously denied that allegation. Other journalists in Gaza say they'll continue to report despite the danger.
We fear for our lives, our families, our loved ones, and our friends. In the end, what comforts us is that this is our job, and we are doing it right.
The deaths of the journalists come as Israel ramps up its military activity in Gaza, despite international pressure against the move. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says it is necessary to bring about the end of the war and bring home the remaining hostages.
We are going for the comprehensive release of all 20 in order to defeat Hamas. And in my opinion, this is the only real way to do it. We talked about a partial deal. We waited for a partial deal. They kept misleading us.
50 hostages taken in the initial attack of October 7, 2023 remain in Gaza. It is believed 20 of them are still alive. And for more, I want to bring Nizar Farsak. He is a political analyst with extensive experience with the Israel-Palestinian conflict and a lecturer of international affairs at George Washington University. Thanks for joining us. As we mentioned, 5 journalists from the Al Jazeera network were killed in a targeted airstrike last night. What is your reaction to Israelis' allegations that correspondent Anas al-Sharif led a Hamas terror cell?
It's unfortunate. I mean, this is not the first time that Israel makes such claims without any proof. Apparently, he was a member, like he was getting salaried from Hamas by 2017, but then he moved into journalism. And at any rate, extrajudicial killings are a war crime. It seems that he's one of the last few journalists left. And before the Israeli takeover of Gaza, because that's the plan, they're trying to clear any journalists from the area to not take any video or report on what's happening in Gaza.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said the IDF will expand its campaign to central Gaza as well as Gaza City. With Hamas degraded as a military force, is this really necessary in your opinion?
No, it's not necessary, and that's the opinion of the Israeli military as well. As far as the war is concerned, the military already has said that there is no military goals to be achieved. All what's remaining are the hostages, and the hostages are gonna be released through a hostage deal. It's not any military operation that's gonna save them, and it's unfortunate that the cabinet, the Israeli government, chose to go ahead despite the advice of the military.
Now, this plan is facing widespread condemnation, not just from Europe, but Saudi Arabia as well, the United Arab Emirates and Qatar. Will that deepen Israel's isolation?
Yes, it most probably will, especially from its allies and at least the Arab regimes that are willing to normalize with it, because it shows that the Israeli government is not even considering the interests and the opinions of its allies and its friends, and that makes it a very bad partner. And looking forward in the future, they're going to be very cautious dealing with this government because it only considers its own interests and does not consider anybody else's interests.
All right, Nizar Farsak, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your insight.
Thank you for having me.
The planned military expansion and the rising humanitarian crisis in Gaza has put Israel's coalition of political allies into a difficult position. There are signs that bipartisan support may be cracking. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now with the latest. Eric.
Well, good evening, Tara. Yes, Israel's decision to occupy Gaza has raised fears that further fighting will only endanger the hostages and worsen an already dire humanitarian crisis. Israel faced condemnation at the United Nations over the weekend, with officials there saying that the move will only increase the violence, but Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will occupy Gaza.
Our goal is to free Gaza, free it from Hamas terrorists. The war can end tomorrow if Gaza, or rather if Hamas lays down its arms and releases all the remaining hostages.
Jewish Congressman Josh Gothenheimer of New Jersey agrees.
He made it very clear that they have zero plans for a long-term occupation. Their goal is to crush the terrorists, to get the hostages out, to get humanitarian aid in.
And many Senate Republicans are also backing Israel.
What the world should be united around is that Hamas can end this killing and they can end this war, the hostages can be released, and the Palestinians in Gaza can have peace if the leadership of Hamas wants that to happen.
But there are signs that traditional bipartisan support is eroding. In a recent Senate vote, a majority of Democrats supported a resolution to block weapon sales to Israel, the highest number ever. Some Republicans are also taking another look. Congressman Lance Goodman posted on X, quote, "Standing with Israel means eliminating every barbaric Hamas terrorist. It also means rejecting the killing and starvation of children in Gaza. We must allow aid to enter Gaza." And many continue to call for a two-state solution.
And although I know this is an unpopular idea in Israel, I believe that ultimately the way to a lasting peace will require two states. What the attributes of a Palestinian state will be will have to be the subject of negotiation.
The United Nations said last summer 146 nations recognized a Palestinian state. And that list has grown, with Canada, the United Kingdom, France, and most recently Australia announcing their own pledge behind a two-state solution. Some Democrats say President Trump is turning a blind eye.
And what Donald Trump is doing is not only providing a blank check, but he's making America complicit in this effort. He says he wants to feed starving people. I wish he would start doing something about it.
California Congressman Ro Khanna, a Democrat, is circulating a letter urging the U.S. government to recognize a Palestinian state for the first time, an effort that's already won the endorsement of roughly a dozen liberal Democrats. And lawmakers tell me that there could be other Gaza-related bills to consider when they return from the August recess. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Eric, thank you. In Haiti, a bad situation has grown worse, causing Pope Leo XIV to plead for peace in his weekly Angelus.
I make a heartfelt appeal to all those responsible to release the hostages immediately. And I ask for the firm support of the international community to create the social and institutional conditions that would allow the Haitian people to live in peace.
We've seen a surge in ongoing gang violence in recent weeks. On Saturday, the government announced a 3-month state of emergency in the country's central region, hoping to improve the situation. Joining us now is Father Louis Morozne, rector of the Cathedral of St. Anne in Ansavo, Haiti. Father Morozne, thank you so much for coming on today. Can you tell us what the situation is like right now in Haiti?
It's a pleasure to be with you, Tara. And right now you've caught me at a very good time in the sense of I am at the airport trying to get on a flight so that I can avoid the gangs that are in the capital so I can get home to my parish. And it's difficult to get flights because everyone is trying to fly. There's one airline that basically flies now after the American Airlines took off, and the European Airlines as well, since the gangs have attacked the planes. And so things are really dire, I would say, even in trying to go minister to my people. So in Port-au-Prince and the surrounding cities, it's known that Port-au-Prince, over 80% of the capital is taken over and run by the gangs.
Father, during the Angelus, the Pope called attention to the ongoing crisis in Haiti. He expressed deep sorrow over the suffering of a population increasingly overwhelmed by despair. Do you think the Pope's words will be heard by Haitian leaders?
Unfortunately, I don't think the political leaders will hear much of the Pope's words, or at least if they do, they won't do much about it. But there are good people in Haiti. We have wonderful people who love Haiti and who love the church, who love the Holy Father, and who would like to do something to see what he calls for, which is basically solidarity with the international community to help put conditions in place so that Haitians can live in peace.
Understand. And what about the international community? Will the Pope's words spur any actions, do you think?
I don't think so, unfortunately. I think it would take a little more from the Holy Father. Pope Francis, before he died, he was also very moved by the Haitian situation, and he called for an international conference of solidarity. And I believe Pope Leo's words sort of fall in line with that. And I'm hoping perhaps more than the pronouncement that was made, which is beautiful and received well, perhaps the Holy Father and the Vatican, one of the dicasteries could perhaps help to call for this international conference that would be able to bring in different leaders, powerful leaders at the call of the Vatican that might be able to turn attention more towards the plight of the poor, especially in Haiti.
And finally, Father, we know the Pope's maternal grandfather was born in Haiti. Do you think that connection resonates at all with the Haitian people?
It resonates greatly. People were very proud to hear that Haiti is all the way at the top in the Catholic Church. And so they feel a deep connection to him. And we hope he feels the same about us.
All right, Father Morozne, thank you so much for updating on the situation, and stay safe.
God bless you, Tara.
God bless you. And now to Colombia, where a senator running for president as a conservative has died. In an attack that stunned the nation, Miguel Uribe was shot in the head in June while greeting supporters at a campaign event. He was a vocal critic of the Colombian government. Authorities arrested 6 people in connection with that shooting, identifying a 14-year-old as the gunman, but never revealed a motive for the attack. Well, we have a lot more still to come on EWTN News Nightly, including an explosion near Pittsburgh, the latest on a horrible tragedy at Pennsylvania U.S. Steel plant, and new developments in the national security trial of pro-democracy advocate Jimmy Lai. We have analysis from Gordon Chang. One person is dead and multiple others are injured or trapped under rubble after an explosion at a U.S. steel plant. It happened this morning at the Clairton Coke Works plant outside of Pittsburgh. Search and rescue operations are underway. The local health department is urging residents within a 1-mile radius to stay indoors. Hazardous air quality levels have not been detected. It's unclear what caused that explosion. Well, the trial of Jimmy Lai, a Catholic pro-democracy advocate currently in prison in Hong Kong, is set to resume on Thursday. 5 years ago yesterday, he was arrested on charges of violating a Beijing-backed national security law. Lai was charged with collusion with foreign forces and conspiracy to defraud. He was granted bail the following day. In December 2020, that bail was revoked and he was placed back in jail. Sources report Lai has been subjected to prolonged solitary confinement with no natural light. He also has not been provided access to the Eucharist. For more, we turn to Gordon Chang, Senior Fellow at the Gateshead Institute and author of The Coming Collapse of China. Gordon, great to have you back. First, do we know anything more about the condition or the health of Jimmy Lai at this point?
Jimmy Lai is 77. He's afflicted with a number of diseases, and he's in poor health. And the important point here is that for China, they certainly don't want him to die in custody because he would become even more of a martyr. But they have made it very clear that they are going to deny him medical assistance. And so this has really become a question of inhumane treatment for many reasons. But denying him medical care of the type that he needs, that's really important.
Absolutely. And as we mentioned, his national security trial is set to resume on Thursday in Hong Kong. So what comes next in this case and what are you expecting?
What's really interesting, Tara, about this is that China has been slow walking this trial. Now, he has been convicted on 4 trumped up charges on minor things, but this is the main case against him. And as you know, you pointed out, this has now been going on since December of 2020. And I think it's because Beijing has demanded that he be tried, and they've demanded that the Hong Kong government take a hardline attitude. But people in Beijing and people in Hong Kong certainly know that this is the wrong way to go about it. And so I think that there is a paralysis in the decision making. But whatever it is, Tara, this is really interesting that they are not coming to a decision because they've been trying to delay this trial, and now they're trying to delay the end of it, and I'm sure they're going to delay a verdict.
Take us back to August of 2020. What led to Jimmy Lai's arrest? Can you go through that again? And what do you make of the international response to the charges and this trial? Is enough being done on behalf of Jimmy Lai?
Well, in 2019, there were the protests, and these unnerved Beijing. And so what we saw in June of 2020, China demanded and actually enacted its national security law, which it imposed on Hong Kong. This was draconian. This was essentially the end of law in Hong Kong. And so they decided that they were going to go after a number of what they call insurrectionists. But clearly people who were just merely advocating for a better Hong Kong. Jimmy was one of them. He was the most high profile because he was the publisher of Apple Daily, the most popular publication in Hong Kong. And they wanted to make an example of him. And so Beijing demanded this national security charge against Jimmy.
Wow. Quickly, we're curious, what other stories are you following at this point?
Well, the interesting thing going on in Beijing right now is turmoil in the leadership. People are saying that Xi Jinping has lost control or lost influence. Other people say that he is as strong as ever, but we are seeing signs of instability. And this is affecting all sorts of decisions that Beijing is making. And it's, I think, causing paralysis in the regime.
Well, Gordon Chang, Senior Fellow at the Gateshead Institute, certainly will be following the case of Jimmy Lai and others. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tara.
All right, up next on EWTN News Nightly, it is the Feast of St. Clare. So, do you know why a 13th century woman is the patron saint of television? We have the answer. Plus, we all have gifts. So, how would we use them? Pope Leo XIV shows us the way. Pope Leo urges Christians to use the gifts they have received from God for the good of others.
Non oro o argento, ma la vita eterna.
At his Sunday address, the Holy Father quoted Jesus' words, "Sell what you own and give alms," and urged the faithful to not only share their material possessions, but also their time, presence, and affection with others, especially those most in need. Today, the church celebrates St. Clare of Assisi. It's a feast of particular significance here at EWTN. Our foundress, Mother Angelica herself, belonged to a branch of the Poor Clares, which is the order started by the Italian saint in the early 13th century. EWTN Vatican journalist Benedict Settergren tells us more about this noble woman who wanted to live a life of radical poverty and simplicity.
Nel 1211
In 1211, Francis already had his companions. On Palm Sunday, a new companion, Clare of Assisi, came knocking, fully ready to respond decisively to the Lord's call.
Alla voce del Signore.
Born in Assisi to a wealthy family, Clare refused to marry early, and having been taught the ways of Christianity by her mother, she was deeply religious and devoted to prayer. One particular encounter inspired her to live according to the manner of the gospel.
Chiara è una nobildonna, è giovanissima.
Clare is a noble woman, very young, who heard Francis of Assisi preach, probably in the town square, and fell in love with Jesus Christ, naked, poor, and crucified. She then asked Francis for help in offering her life to God.
Offrire la propria vita.
After cutting her hair as a sign of her consecration to God, Francis placed Clare in several convents, but she longed for a stricter life of poverty and simplicity. She soon founded her own community at San Damiano, the first monastery of the Poor Clares. The life of the sisters was governed by the Rule of St. Clare, the first rule in the history of the Church known to have been written by a woman, which prescribed absolute poverty, a life of prayer and penance, strict enclosure, manual work, and fraternal charity.
Nessun papa approvava questa regola perché era troppo dura.
No pope approved this rule. Why? Because it was too strict, too demanding for women. And what does Clare do in easing the rule? She asks for a privilege, the privilege of absolute poverty. Until, on August 9th, the Pope personally comes here to San Damiano, to this place, and hands Chiara the rule. For her, it is a sign that her mission is accomplished.
Che la sua missione è compiuta.
2 days after Pope Innocent IV's visit, Clare of Assisi died. By then, the Poor Clares had already spread to different European countries. Today, her legacy lives on through thousands of Poor Clare sisters worldwide who continue her radical commitment to prayer, poverty, and contemplative life in nearly 900 monasteries across more than 70 countries.
Tutti noi facciamo l'esperienza.
We all experience success. Today, Clare is a woman who instead leads us to what is essential, even in material goods. And what is the essential? It is that what I have, I share, because everything that is not given away is lost.
Ciò che non viene donato va perduto.
In Rome, Benedict Settergren, EWTN News Nightly.
And St. Clare of Assisi is also the patron saint of television. That's because she reportedly saw and heard the Mass projected onto the wall of her room once when she was sick. St. Clare of Assisi, pray for us. And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tara Mergener. Good night and God bless.